The solitary hunter's act of compassion toward a dying, pregnant wolf led to a remarkable reunion. 1 year after rescuing her and her unborn pups, Caleb heard a sound that brought tears to his eyes. In a small clearing, he stumbled upon a shocking sight: a pregnant wolf, weak and alone, lying helplessly in the frigid Alaskan snow. Without a moment's hesitation, Caleb reached into his backpack and retrieved the dried meat he had packed for lunch. He gently tossed it toward the wolf, who sniffed it cautiously before beginning to eat. "There you go, girl," Caleb said softly. "You need that more than I do." As he watched her eat, he noticed her frail frame, matted fur, and the signs of starvation. He wondered what had become of her pack, as wolves typically thrive in groups that support each other in hunting and survival. Yet here she was, all alone. From that day on, Caleb made it his mission to help the wolf. He named her Freya because her fur shimmered like moonlight. Realizing that Freya's babies would come soon, Caleb worried about how she would care for her pups in the cold winter. He knew he had to act fast. Without wasting any time, Caleb hurried back to his cabin to gather supplies. He returned with an axe, rope, and as many blankets as he could carry. Working tirelessly throughout the day, Caleb built a small shelter near where he had found Freya. He carefully gathered logs and branches, creating a sturdy structure to protect her from the harsh weather. Inside, he made a soft bed of moss and leaves, lining it with the blankets he had brought. As the sun set, Caleb knew it was time to move Freya. He approached her slowly, speaking in soothing tones. "Hey there, Freya. I've got a better place for you to rest." Freya's eyes followed him wearily, but she didn't try to move away. With great care, Caleb wrapped Freya in a warm blanket. She was weak and didn't resist as he gently lifted her into his arms. The pregnant wolf was heavier than he expected, but Caleb was determined. He carried her the short distance to the new shelter, whispering words of encouragement with each step. "Almost there, girl. You're doing great," he murmured as he ducked into the den. Carefully, he laid Freya down on the soft bedding. She seemed to relax almost immediately, sinking into the warmth and comfort of her new home. Caleb sat with Freya for a while, ensuring she was comfortable and offering her water. As the first stars appeared in the sky, he reluctantly prepared to leave. "I'll be back first thing in the morning, Freya. You rest now." From that day forward, Caleb returned every day, bringing Freya food and checking on her progress. At first, Freya remained cautious, but she began to trust him as the days passed. Caleb's kindness to Freya didn't go unnoticed by the other animals in the forest. A curious black wolf began to follow Caleb on his daily visits to Freya. At first, Caleb was worried that the black wolf might try to harm Freya or her future pups, but to his surprise, the black wolf seemed just as concerned about Freya as he was. One day, when Caleb arrived at Freya's shelter, he found the black wolf curled beside her, keeping her warm. Caleb couldn't believe his eyes. It was as if the black wolf knew Freya needed help and wanted to do his part. From that day on, the black wolf became a regular visitor, often bringing small bits of food for Freya. As winter wore on, Caleb continued to care for Freya, sharing stories of his life in the forest. Freya listened intently, her amber eyes fixed on him, and Caleb found himself looking forward to their time together, feeling a deep bond with the wild wolf. One stormy evening, worried about Freya, he donned his warmest coat and ventured into the blizzard. The thick snow made it hard to see, but he pressed on, calling her name as he reached her shelter, only to find it empty. Despairing, he heard a faint whimper and discovered Freya in a nearby cave, giving birth. Caleb stayed with her, shielding her from the cold, and marveled as she welcomed 4 tiny pups before promising to return the next morning. The next day, after the storm had passed, Caleb returned as promised and found Freya curled up with her new family, looking tired but content. He assisted her in caring for the pups, bringing extra food to help her produce milk. As the weeks went by, the pups grew stronger, playing and exploring outside the shelter he had built. Caleb especially enjoyed watching the smallest pup, whom he named Tiny. Though he was always the last to try new things, once he did, he became the most adventurous. The black wolf continued to visit, playing with the pups as if they were his own. Caleb was amazed at the bond between Freya and the black wolf, as if they had formed their own little pack, with him as an honorary member. As spring approached, Caleb noticed increased activity in the forest. One afternoon, while visiting Freya and her pups, he heard twigs snapping and muffled voices nearby. Trusting his instincts, he quietly crept through the underbrush and spotted 4 hunters with rifles tracking Freya's prints in the melting snow. His heart raced as he overheard their conversation. "We've been tracking this wolf pack for days," one hunter whispered. "They've been spotted near farms. We can't risk them attacking livestock or people." "I heard there are pups," another added. "Better to handle this now before it gets worse." Caleb knew he had to act fast. He quickly went to Freya's den, his mind racing to come up with a plan. As he arrived, he saw Freya herding her pups deeper into the cave. The black wolf stood guard at the entrance. However, Caleb could hear the hunters getting closer, their voices growing louder. When the hunters came into view, Caleb stood firmly in front of the shelter entrance, his stance resolute, his eyes meeting theirs with unwavering determination. "This wolf and her pups are under my protection," he said firmly, his voice echoing through the still forest air. "They've done no harm to anyone." The hunters were shocked, lowering their rifles slightly in surprise. They had never seen anyone defend a wolf before. "Caleb?" one of them said, recognizing him. "What are you doing? These wolves could be dangerous." Caleb took a deep breath. His next words could mean life or death for Freya and her family. He began to tell them Freya's story, explaining how he had found her dying in the snow and helped her survive the brutal winter. As he spoke, his voice filled with passion and conviction, detailing the birth of the pups and the unlikely friendship that had formed. "Come see for yourselves," Caleb urged, gesturing toward the shelter. Cautiously, the hunters approached. He showed them how gentle Freya was and how her pups were like playful puppies. As if on cue, Tiny, the smallest pup, poked his head out of the shelter, his curiosity overcoming his fear. The hunters watched in amazement as the pup cautiously approached Caleb, nuzzling his hand. The hunters listened, their expressions shifting from suspicion to wonder. They were amazed by Caleb's compassion and the unusual friendship between a man and a wolf. One by one, they lowered their rifles completely, the tension in the air dissipating. "I've never seen anything like this," one hunter admitted, shaking his head in disbelief. "Maybe we were too quick to judge," Caleb said. "These wolves aren't a threat. They're a family just trying to survive like the rest of us. I've been watching them closely, and I can assure you they haven't gone near any farms. They hunt in the deep forest, away from people." The hunters exchanged looks, clearly reconsidering their mission. Finally, the leader spoke. "All right, we trust you, but you'll need to keep an eye on them and make sure they stay out of trouble." Caleb nodded solemnly, relief washing over him. "You have my word," he promised, knowing he had just become the official protector of Freya's pack. As the hunters departed, Caleb turned back to the shelter. Freya and the black wolf stood at the entrance, their amber eyes meeting his. As spring arrived, Caleb knew it was time to let Freya and her pups return to the wild. Though it was a tough decision, he understood it was best for their survival. One cool morning, Caleb approached the shelter he had built, finding Freya and her pups basking in the sunlight. Emotion welled up in him as he greeted her gently. Freya perked up, wagging her tail, while her now confident pups played at her feet. With a heavy heart, Caleb began dismantling the shelter, explaining, "It's time for you to go, Freya. You and your pups need to live freely as wolves should." Freya watched him intently, seemingly understanding, while the black wolf, her constant companion, stood nearby. After removing the shelter, Caleb folded the blankets he had used for Freya, planning to keep them as a memory. With the area restored, he knelt to say goodbye, allowing the pups to nuzzle his hand one last time. Turning to Freya, he gently petted her and whispered, "Thank you for trusting me and showing me a side of nature I never knew." Freya licked his hand, bringing tears to his eyes, then barked softly to her pups, who gathered around her as if sensing the moment. Caleb stood up and stepped back. "Go on now," he said, his voice breaking. "It's time for you to be wild again." Freya gave Caleb one last look, then led her pups deeper into the forest. The black wolf hesitated, then followed them. Caleb watched as they disappeared into the trees. He stood there for a long time, listening to the sounds of the forest and feeling a mix of sadness and peace. Back at his cabin, Caleb took out a notebook and started writing about his time with Freya. As he wrote, Caleb realized that while Freya and her pups were gone, they had forever changed how he saw the forest and its creatures. A year had passed when Caleb, wandering through the forest one autumn day, heard a familiar wolf's howl. His heart raced as he spotted Freya, now bigger and stronger, with 4 grown wolves, her pups, by her side. Freya's howl resonated in the area where Caleb had once helped her survive the harsh winter. Tears filled his eyes as he watched her thriving family, feeling a deep connection as she acknowledged him. The moment was magical, with her pups joining in a beautiful chorus. As Freya and her pack disappeared into the forest, Caleb felt a profound sense of joy and purpose, realizing his kindness had transformed him forever. What do you think of this story? Let us know in the comments section. I hope you liked this video. Please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Thank you.